Aryan Brotherhood RICO trial hit a bit of a wrinkle 3 weeks in. Ronnie Yandel and Danny Troxel, supposedly the number 1 and 2 guys.
Ronald Yandel is the alleged ringleader of a crime spree involving the Aryan Brotherhood. Prosecutors used federal wiretaps to discover that Yandel enlisted these fellow Aryan Brotherhood gang members to commit a series of crimes from behind prison walls.
And through that wiretap, we built a very strong case.
Guards testified that on the van ride from the federal courthouse to New Folsom Prison, Ronald Yandel and Danny Troxel blew up at each other with a series of back and forth threats that an officer ranked as a 10 out of 10 on the danger scale.
Because I was just trying to get, the guy just kept coming at me.
Todd Ashker, according to the Department of Corrections, is a member of the Aryan Brotherhood. He was sent to the Pelican Bay SHO because he assaulted a guard and killed another inmate.
But it was in self-defense. The guy wanted me to give him some money and all this. He felt I owed him, right? And I didn't feel I owed him nothing.
A few of their hardcore leaders sat in the back and plotted their return, and no one's more hardcore and diabolical than the old school Aryan Brotherhood. Led by Todd Ashker, who had spent 27 years in solitary confinement, a series of hunger strikes and lawsuits finally freed them and the leaders of the BGF, Nuestra Familia, La MA, and others from their draconian dungeons and back into the general inmate population in 2015, where they immediately moved to solidify their grip on the prison's dope trade and control of the white inmate population by any means necessary, to borrow a term from somewhere else.
We are the ones who formed what was known as the Pelican Bay SHO Short Corridor Collective, which was a prisoner class human rights movement seeking to expose the torture of long-term decades. You know, it was well known that I was one of the main catalysts for the creation of that group, and all the writings that were put out in public describing our complaints, and in order to educate the public and other prisoners about what's really been going on in this California system in these SHO units for close to 30 years.
Todd Ashker, who also sued the California Department of Corrections successfully and the construction company who built Pelican Bay for failure to protect him because some members of the NF popped their cell and were able to hit him up. He got several $100,000, and he also got the freedom to hit a regular level 4 prison yard. And I mean, more than Todd Ashker certainly is responsible for ending the lockdown, but he's probably the single most important person, and he's back in solitary, and the administration likes him there.
So that was an opportunity for IGI and probably the administration to separate me from the other main representatives in this coalition.
And to show you that the phrase "with friends like these, who needs enemies" means, there's a guy named Steve-O, not sure if it was a guy who was Ashker's AB buddy. Ashker gave him some money from his settlement, and so this guy wanted to get out of Pelican Bay and be able to spend some of this money he got from Ashker, so he murked his cellie and then dropped out and debriefed, so he got put into somewhere more comfortable, I think Mule Creek, where he could get Fat Canteen, do DOPE, and chase them boys. Meanwhile, his benefactor, Todd Ashker, is back locked down and supposedly in the hat.
I've been in the SHO already for 28.3 years.
Ordering smuggling drugs into California prisons. That's what the feds say the members of the Aryan Brotherhood are doing. They charged 16 members with running an extensive criminal enterprise today. 7 people outside prison were charged with assisting.
Drama never stops. It's still going on even in court. You're an effing piece of shit. You're an effing piece of shit. You're an effing piece of shit. This is what Ronnie Yandel, aka Renegade, aka the number 1 AB in the state of California, was yelling at his co-defendant Danny Troxel's attorney in court, and Danny Troxel's attorney said, "At least I'm not a rat." You're a rat. The cop testified that Troxel and Yandel were yelling at each other. So I don't know if there's any coming back from that.
It's a new and increasing face, white and middle class. The black, the poor, still outnumber him by a vast majority. But they all share one experience, prison.
After the race and heroin wars of the 60s, 70s, and into the 80s that saw hundreds unalived and resulted in the California prison GANGSs expanding their reach onto the streets and into the federal system across the country, prison administration managed to somewhat contain them by infamously slamming them down into special confinement units away from the rest of the inmates.
Pelican Bay is to isolate those individuals who come into the prison system and cannot behave within the prison system.
Built at a cost of $250 million, Pelican Bay was designed as a massive automated isolation unit using state-of-the-art technology. Inside the SHO, no bars, but specially designed steel doors, no direct sunlight ever, and no direct contact with another inmate. For 22.5 hours a day, inmates are kept in their cells, and for 24 hours a day, the inmates are under the control of heavily armed guards.
California led the country in this long-term lockdown policy, and by August of 2011, 128 guys had been in total isolation for over 20 years, and 723 had been in for a decade.
The man in his holding cell outside of his pod is Todd Ashker. Ashker is in prison for murder.
I didn't even consciously know I was.
According to the SACB, this morning, Patrick Big Pat Brady, as they called him, pleaded guilty to murder in aid of racketeering.
Leading up to the indictment in 2019 and even after it, there has been, to quote the lead prosecutor, a circular firing squad among the top dogs of the California AB. Quick aside, the California and federal chapters of the AB are the only ones that recognize each other. Now, all kind of states, Arizona, Ohio, New Mexico, you'll hear they got Aryan Brotherhoods, and I'm sure they have different types of relations with each other. But as far as recognizing someone as a made member brother, it's only California and the feds. And interestingly, the lead defendant, renegade Ronnie Yandel, the California #1, he got inducted into the brand while serving a 10-year federal sentence after getting caught with Method Man production materials in the great state of New Jersey.
They came to me one day in my cell, and before I went up to Pelican Bay, said, we ran an investigation on you, determined you're a member of the Aryan Brotherhood, and they validated me with an indeterminate SHO program, which means that I had to stay the rest of my life in the SHO until I died, because I had 65 years of life. And I was like, well, how did you determine that I was a validated gay member? And they said through these confidential information that they didn't have a right to reveal who it actually was, so I could defend myself or dispute whatever they were saying about me. So this went on some informant or somebody that debriefed some other prisoner, most likely owed money or for heroin debts or drug debts, or just did some kind of dirty thing in prison, and they go check in to be protected, and they tell them whatever they tell the police whatever they want them to.
That's what I call these debriefers. They're torture victims who were so desperate and broke down. They were broke down by the conditions that were subjected to such an extent that everything that was ever contrary to all of their beliefs and the way they lived their whole life up to that point, it just destroyed that. And they went crawling on their stomachs to these gang unit investigators and wanted to lick on their boots and say, please get me out of here, I can't take it anymore.
Troxel's defense attorney has been trying to paint him as a peacemaker that kept telling Yandel and others, no, don't kill this guy, don't do that, let it go. Kind of a weird defense, and as a matter of fact, Todd Laris, Troxel's lawyer, the one who called Yandel a rat, has asked several witnesses on the stand whether Yandel and his cellmate Billy Sylvester broke Aryan Brotherhood codes of conduct. So I don't know if that's a defense to get him out of jail, or these two guys are just juggling with each other in some personal battle. And you know, there's hundreds of made members of the Aryan Brotherhood, I guess, or at least 100 or something. Lots of these guys were not mixed up in this. I don't know if this is really about a couple drug rings and the people at the top trying to impose their will. It's not about the whole AB, and in fact, all these criminal cases that you usually read about, especially in prisons, you know, everybody's not involved. It's just a small group of people. Yandel put out during pandemic, Yandel had a cell phone and was posting a bunch of videos to Instagram and on YouTube.
It's dumb to see us all as divided. Who's dividing us is the powers that be, the hidden hand. Some people call them the blue bloods and the secret society, but it truly is big pharma, agriculture, banking, and media. The same 1% of the families of the world control that, and they're the ones that are actually manipulating people.
What he was saying is true. It seemed like he was kind of he was going by the true philosophy of what they all talked about during the end of hostilities. He got very politicized, but of course he was talking in public and making vague references to some of the stuff in prison. I would imagine that could definitely be considered by some as falling outside of the realm of what he was supposed to do, and maybe that's what Troxel's lawyer was referring to. Several of them have gotten on the witness stand, though certainly not all. Lots of them have just taken plea agreements, but a few key ones, including two high-up ABs, have turned state's evidence. One was Travis Burhop, who from his own prison cell ran a large H and Method Man operation that was making deliveries as far away as Missouri, and who allegedly had pounds and pounds and pounds of H and Chris coming into the prison facility he was in, generating probably hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of dollars over the years in profits spread out amongst everybody. And then there was Donald Popeye Mazza, who started as a member of the Huntington Beach surf Nazi crew, public enemy #1.
Remembers the beginning.
When we were kids, and when we started this as kids, we were all punk rockers at Disneyland.
He is Brody Davis, a parolee who has done time for intimidating a witness. A far cry from Disneyland, he and his Peni brothers put down roots in the white supremacist skinhead movement, fertilized by hate, still blossoming into racist anger.
And he eventually became an AB, which brought the public enemy #1 into a tight alliance with the AB as their foot soldiers while the ABs were still locked down. The public enemy #1, Peni as it's called, was in charge of enforcing their will out in the general population.
By the early 90s, Peni had moved to Orange County, which became its main stomping grounds. Anaheim became a familiar haunt.
They were deputized, if you will. Now, for a long time, the infamous Nazi lowriders had served this sort of deputy service to the AB, but a bunch of them ended up getting also locked down.
With AB lockdown, that gave rise to the Nazi lowriders, or NLR, another white supremacist gang that started running the prison yards in the 1990s.
They're straight killers, and lowriders are killers. They're like a rattlesnake. You walk across their shaded area, and they're just liable to strike you without much of a warning at all.
And without much warning at all. In January of 1999, the NLR was snake-bit itself. The Department of Corrections named NLR a prison gang, and its members, like the Aryan Brotherhood, are now locked down in special security cells. And that has opened a prison door for Peni.
We are getting intelligence that they are stepping up to take the place of the Nazi lowriders from the main line.
Into the secure housing units, they were part of the groups that had to be let out back in 2015, and the ones that were left on the main line kind of got watered down, so Peni had to step into the fold. So it was very important when Donald Popeye Mazza got made an AB, and it also was very important just a few weeks ago when he got on that witness stand.
And when this heavy metal door at Wasco State Prison cranked open in April of 1999. Inmate Mazza, known as Popeye, was released on parole. Detectives say within 5 hours of his release, Popeye was back in Orange County, seated inside a camper smoking methamphetamine with 2 accomplices and the hit victim, a gang dropout named Billy Ray Austin. According to this felony complaint, Dominic Rizzo, another Peni parolee, beat and held Austin as Popeye plunged a knife into him over and over again. Then, Popeye turned to witnesses and said, "Want some too, punk?"
He said he knew as soon as he saw his name in the indictment that he was going to end up on the witness stand, and the 53-year-old made it official earlier this month. Seated next to a federal judge and dressed in a moss green jail jumpsuit. He was on the stand 3 full days recounting his life of crime. He did a lot. His entrance into the AB, his incarceration, and the consequences of his decision to drop out and cooperate with the feds. Quote, "I will be hunted the rest of my life by your client," Mazza told an attorney representing one of the AB lawyers during cross-examination.
This particular group has a very great potential for violence and are pretty much unpredictable when that violence may occur.
Correctional Officer Wes Harris says, "It started decades ago with members of the Aryan Brotherhood, or AB, the gang of gangs among white supremacists."
So Peni got its start as kind of just young kids being white supremacists down in Huntington Beach. They got famous in the early 2000s because one of their founders, a guy named Scottish, made the mistake of giving an interview to a local news agency. And actually I talked to his romantic partner from a long time ago, and she told me a lot more, and maybe I'll go further into that story. But long story short, Scottish did a little brief TV interview. They blurred his face, but they could tell who he was, I think from like his pit bull or something in the background, and they came and murked him.
This dog's owner belongs to a group so taken with violence.
His name's Hitman Tank.
He jokes even his pit bull carries a sawed-off shotgun. But later, seeing the dog in action, it's arguable Tank doesn't need a weapon. And as night falls in this remote area near Big Bear,
Myself, I have over 300 guns.
the tattooed hands of Tank's owner ready a .38 revolver.
Meanwhile, Mazza went to prison in the early 2000s for attempted murder. He hit a SEX offender and ended up in Pelican Bay, where he met the fellas, and he ended up getting made. And when he joined AB in 07, it was seen by law enforcement as a power play for Peni, turning its members essentially into foot soldiers for the still slammed down AB.
Led by convicted killer John Stinson, the AB are locked away in special units at maximum security prisons like this one at Pelican Bay. This white supremacist ex-convict explains it simply.
I don't know if too many ABs walk in the yard, because ABs are all locked down and they don't have any physical contact with anybody.
Mazza got out in the early 2010s. He did so with a new outlook on life. He claims because people in the AB told him, "Man, don't come back here to prison." Well, that would have been one wise thing, they said. He got baptized, as you see in this photo. He got his racist tattoos removed from his chest, and by his own admission, he was 90% legal, but still 10% illegal. So he found himself back part of this indictment. And of course, sitting at the Christian table doesn't save you from the punishments of your past. Only turning state's evidence can do that, and that's what Mazza did. He admitted to conspiring with members of the AB and Peni to murder a man named Michael Thumper Tripp, a fellow gang member whose homicide prosecutors contend was ordered by, I think, Yandel. Thumper did not end up getting whacked, and he wrote a letter to the court trying to help Mazza. And federal prosecutors and Maza both contend as part of his plea deal that he only pretended that he was going to try to hit Thumper. He was scared to tell his AB bosses no. Of course, this is how the prosecutors justify giving him a plea deal. Is it true that he was never going to do it, or he just was incapable or didn't get around to it? Who knows? Prosecutors have agreed, of course, to seek a low-end sentence for Mr. Maza, though it does carry life in prison. But he was very, very important, as evinced by his 3 days of testimony. I'm sure he'll be walking around a meth house near you before the year 2030, if I had to guess. Maza's current whereabouts are unknown. His whereabouts went dark in September 2021 when his info disappeared from the Sacramento County Jail Register, along with the whereabouts of Travis Burhap, the guy who was the point man in a giant AB method man and horse conspiracy. He pled guilty for plotting with Renegade Yandel and Danny Troxel to a specific homicide, murking one of their AB brothers, a guy named James Mickey. And once again, he was given the same excuse as Donald Maza. Burhap said he was never intending to actually do it. He just told him yes, so they'd leave him alone. Burhap may never have actually earned his rack. Burhap got let in because he was a real serious drug dealer, and he generated a lot of money. So Burhap had been ordered to personally hit this AB Mickey, and in order to gain entrance into the AB and avoid the repercussions of not doing it, he agreed to arrange a hit on him at Calipatria State Prison in August of 2016, though his heart wasn't in it, according to the deal he signed with prosecutors. Interesting, I mean, some of the people you think would never get out and are the worst ones are walking around, and different people get roped into different things. Crime in general, the court system in prison is very chaotic. You never know where you might end up, so best not to get involved. With Travis Burhap leading the dope dealing side, the AB's generated so much cash dealing inside and outside California prisons that U.S. Attorney McGregor Scott said when the indictments were announced that they'd seized a house and other property which were purchased with drug proceeds used by the AB. And the average house in California is $500,000. So between buying houses and cars and putting money on people's books and getting high and all the different, paying for people's wives and girlfriends and kids on the outs, they probably were generating, several $1 million over the course of the conspiracy. Now, interestingly, we know about the long-time ties between the AB and the Mexican Mafia. Well, Travis Burhap admitted to conspiring specifically with a Mexican Mafia member named Michael Mosca Torres, and Torres would supply him with H, and I think Burhap handled the meth, and they were sending stuff to Washington State, Missouri, and within the California prison system. As I said earlier, there was one person who murked himself and one person who was unalived in the indictment. Well, Mosca Torres was the one who was unalived.
California State Prison is investigating the stabbing death of an inmate. According to investigators, two inmates, Juan Martinez and Ray Martinez, attacked and killed 59-year-old Michael Torres. Torres had been serving a 133-year sentence for a list of crimes, including attempted murder, and was a third strike offender.
And he was the only non-AB or AB affiliate. Mosca, his nickname means the fly. He'd been in prison since I think the early 90s. He was in charge of all of LA County Jail, collecting dues from Southsiders there, which is a big money maker. He was from a very old gang, the San Fer gang in San Fernando Valley, but he got murked in July of 2023 in some type of, I guess, internal power play. He got hit in a California state prison, and just a few weeks ago, 13 people that had been working for him as part of the Mexican Mafia or Serrano power structure to collect the money and control the LA County Jail, they just got hit with the RICO, even though the leader of it was killed almost a year ago. There's a lot of wiretap info on Yandel, especially coming out of his prison cell phone about Mosca Torres sending up very, very high quality H through his runners to Northern California to service Yandel's people on the outs, and also the stuff that came into the prison. The only person going into this that was a little bit famous was a former MMA guy named Matt Psycho Hall. Psycho Hall was psycho. He was running around Orange County taxing drug dealers on behalf of the AB, and there was I think he ended up killing a guy who taxed the wrong person, something at a hotel. But basically, he killed somebody over $2,500. Went on the run, got caught in Costa Rica, and then swung himself in a Costa Rican jail cell before he could be brought up to indictment. So, and then other than that, there's like 2 women and a lawyer. So that's all 16 of them. 3 still on trial, 2 dead. Everyone else pled out, and 2 of them are big, important state's informants. Donald Mazza from Peni, formerly of Peni, and Travis Burhop. And I'll just leave you with this. This is a whole big separate part of it, but besides the dope, when the Brotherhood was away, the skinheads did play, but when the brand wrote again, the skinheads did pay. Other than Yogi Pinnell, most of the homicides, or all of the homicides alleged in the case, revolve around the fact that 4 skinhead gangs, and ABs are not skinheads, but Peni is, United States Aryan Skins, or United States Association of Skins or something, the Golden State Skins, the Wolfpack out of Sacramento, and the American Front tried to come together in the California prisons to overthrow the AB's power, and Peni was going at all of them. And Ronald Renegade Yandel's cellmate Billy Sylvester, he's charged, and I think the opening crime in the indictment, the 2011 homicide of a guy on the yard at Folsom that Sylvester and another guy are alleged to have done. And to give you an idea of what kind of people are involved in these skinhead groups, I think the biggest one, the USAS, United Society of Aryan Skins, they were founded by a guy named Davis. Davis would tell his young proteges, I don't want you guys using drugs, so give me all your commissary so you won't be tempted. And he, of course, would go use drugs with the commissary. And then when his gang got greenlit by the AB and started getting by the Penis, he went into protective custody, leaving all his guys in danger. He was eventually released, and according to Powder, a former Peni who's dropped out and likes to tell stories on a channel called Stories Written by a Current Prisoner on YouTube, which generally sound fairly believable, he died of an OD recently. So that's the state of the 16-person California federal AB indictment. 13 down one way or another, 3 to go, and they're at each other's throats. Who needs friends? Al Prophet, American Dope.
Investigators took 5 years to document how the criminal network used contraband cell phones to send out their orders, with prison officials in the dark.
How could they get phones? How could this happen? Phones and contraband are an ever challenging issue within our prison system.